Kootenai County Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing for November 29th at 6 p.m. Commissioners Dean, David, Zayal, Stearns, Glader, and Levine are present, and Commissioner Rose is attending via Zoom. Does anybody have any changes to the agenda? Okay. Does anybody think that this issue presents a conflict of interest and should recuse themselves? Okay. Then we're actually here tonight to hear case number ORA 22-0004 Cougar Gulch rezone, which is really a response to a petition from the property owners within the area that would rezone approximately 6 square miles from agriculture suburban to rural. We're going to use the normal public hearing process. Director Callahan will start with a staff report. Then we will take public comments. After all the public comments are heard, we'll close the public comment period and then move into deliberations. So I'm just going to ask Director Callahan to give us his report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. As a housekeeping measure, before I go into the details of this, I received 2 emails just before tonight's meeting, and they're on the dais before you. One is in opposition and one is in favor. So that brings the total written comments today to 2 in favor and 4 opposed, or at least of those 4 opposed, 1 at least neutral, and asking you to take out the property. We'll get into the details of that in a moment. Because this project was a petition by the neighborhood and the county commissioners elected to allow this to go forward because it was a petition, it's a legislative rezoning, and that's why it's before you instead of the hearing examiner. If it was Mr. Stearns doing his usual rezoning, if he needed one, for a project he was doing, that would normally go to the hearing examiner and then to the county commissioners. But again, tonight's hearing is legislative in nature, and that's all because this is a petition for a large area, a group of properties. So we're considering this entire area as affecting the entire county, and that's why it's a legislative matter. One of the benefits of that, I'll just say, is the due process of law is less rigorous for a legislative rezoning because, for example, a property owner or a person that has an interest in this can talk directly to the decision makers all throughout the process, just like they could if you were crafting law. And that's the legislative nature of these things. And it's perfectly fine. So in that way, legislative rezoning is a little easier, if you will, than a quasi-judicial one. With that, I'll use Aaron Quall's staff report, which you've had now, and I assume you've read through, and a lot of it you've actually been briefed on. And because of all that, I'm going to be very brief and really just drill down on the things that I think the audience might not know or that may be a good springboard for conversation. At least I hope will be. So if you look on the screen or in your packet, the area outlined in red is what's actually before you. It's currently all zoned agricultural, suburban. The neighborhood's asking to go to rural. And it's roughly 6 square miles. It's the largest area rezoning that I know of that we've done in the county in at least the last 9 years, quite possibly longer. When you compare how the rural zoning district and the agricultural suburban stack up in terms of uses and setbacks, that's what these next 2 charts on the screen and in your packet reveal. And highlighted in red is really the difference between the agricultural, suburban, and the rural zoning districts. And they're not significant differences in my view, but that's one of the things that you need to decide for tonight And you certainly can consider that as a rationale for not going forward with this if you think the development standards or the uses are going to change too vastly or too greatly. I don't think they are changing very much. As you can see now when we get to setbacks, they're, again, what's in red on the screen is what's different between the two zoning districts. And again, I don't see any of these things as being showstoppers in any way. This next map you've heard in workshop at least twice now, so I'm not going to dwell on it except to say the staff has plugged in this little area in black as the parcel that Mr. Dobler will speak to tonight. He'll be asking you to pull that area out of this process because it's right on the edge, because they've been working towards a subdivision for some considerable time. They haven't actually applied yet, but they've talked to the water district. They understand that they would be served by the water district. So they'll make their case like that for you as to why they'd like to be taken out of this rezoning. One of the things that's a little out of the ordinary for tonight's hearing is, even though this is legislative, and ordinarily a legislative rezoning would really only look at how this compares to the comprehensive plan and is it consistent or at least not inconsistent with the comp plan. In our case, in Kootenai County's code, we have findings for approval for all rezonings, whether they're legislative or not. And so, as Pat would say, with a belt and suspenders approach, Pat Braden, our legal counsel, we've gone ahead and included an analysis of all of the criteria. It's on the screen, it's in your packet. And you've heard this. The short version is we think all of the criteria can be met. And of course, you can disagree. I would just suggest that if you do disagree, that at the end of tonight's hearing, you articulate, go back to this and say, here's some of the rationale of why I disagree, so that we have that sort of thing on the record. At your workshop, you'll recall that we brought up the notion that there will be some properties that could potentially be substandard, meaning they won't make the minimum 5-acre lot size. We've now done the math on it. It works out to be close to 80 parcels total of all of the parcels in the area. And so one of the things you may have read, and it's on the screen now, is we've come up with language that we would recommend you include in anything going forward to the Board of County Commissioners in the rezoning, I mean. And this would actually be an amendment inside the written portion of the Land Use and Development Code, just to read as you see on the screen, to make it clear that parcels that are less than 5 acres are still eligible for building permits. In that way, it's really just a simple fix so that we don't have nonconformity created by this, and very similar in approach to what you'll recall we did for the Hauser zoning. And Aaron's been so nice as to work up a draft motion for you in case you want to go there. He's spelled it out for you. Again, we have people that have given you written comments. You have copies of all that now. I'm not going to belabor any of that. I think, but there is a good segue from one of the people that's opposed, because I had time to look up where their property is. It's 8.8 acres. It's right in the middle of this requested rezoning. And so that brings up what to me is something we ought to dialogue about now, so that you can be thinking about it by the time you make your decision tonight. You really, in my view, you have three options tonight. You could categorically dismiss this request and just deny it, recommend denial to the board, and we're done. That's an option. I'm not in favor of that. I'm in favor of you actually recommending approval. which is your second option. And you could categorically do it the same way, recommend approval for everything, regardless of the fact that you've had people say they're in opposition and would like to be, in one case, would like to be carved out. So that leads you to the third option, which is you can use if you'll pardon the metaphor, a scalpel, a surgeon's approach to this, and you could carve out portions of the request that you don't think really have to go forward. I would like to hear from Pat Braden, if he's zoomed in on this. There he is. If you go there.
Yes, I'm here.
To make sure that we aren't creating some sort of spot zoning concerns. I don't believe so, but I'd like Pat to weigh in on it since it's a legal concern. And especially if you were to go with one of those parcels, which is relatively small, right in the middle, that feels a little awkward to me. But it doesn't feel at all awkward to me to carve off that 80-acre piece, which is on the edge, and they've been processing this for a considerable time outside of our office. They haven't actually applied yet, again, at least not that I know of. But to my way of thinking, that's an easier call to carve off a piece. And the rationale for doing a sort of all or none for the rest of the pieces is that zoning generally needs to be consistent and uniform throughout. That's true in our code, and it's also true in every code in the United States. It's consistent in two ways. In the zoning district itself, all the things that are in that district are consistent. But also when you look at groups of zoning. So you generally try to categorize the areas of a community that you want to be commercial, and others for industrial, and others for residential, and different degrees of residential. And you try not to mix up a hodgepodge of zoning, in large part because doing that creates a hodgepodge of development. Here it's less of a concern in my view because the only significant changes you're facing are going from the 2-acre size of the agricultural zoning district to the 5-acre of rural. That's a pretty significant jump in my view compared to the other things you saw highlighted in red earlier, which are in my view inconsequential. So I just want you to be mindful about spot zoning, about teasing out parcels. If you think you want to go there, get Pat's opinion on it. But those are the options as I see it. And I'm certainly here for any questions that you may have at this time.
Anybody have any questions for David?
Hi, you, David. Sorry, my microphone's not working. Could you restate those three options again, just synopsis, please?
You can approve it, recommend approval to the board, recommend denial to the board, recommend, those are 1 and 2, recommend approval, but pull out a parcel, or 2 parcels, or 3 parcels, it's your call. I lost my train of thought on, when you said that, it made me think of something else.
Yeah, I mean, the other option is we deny it, we approve it as is,
Right.
or we approve it with some variations.
Oh, that's, yeah. And the
Right.
variations, regardless of
Yeah.
any approval you do, I'd like you to go forward with a recommendation of something like the option
Right.
we threw up for you and is in your packet for dealing with nonconformity.
And what we're doing is just recommending something to
To
the
the-
county commissioners
right,
who
to
ultimately have the final decision on which way to go. Any other questions?
David,
Yeah, Deborah?
this is for David Callahan. That parcel that you were mentioning that wants to be excluded, that's a small parcel. Could you tell me what size that parcel is, please?
It's 8.8 acres, and I may have misspoken. I don't know that they want to be excluded. I just know they're opposed to the rezoning.
Okay, and there it's 8 acres. Okay,
But my
Thank you.
assumption is if you left their zoning in place the way it is, they'd have nothing to be opposed to.
But the spot,
But I have a concern for spot zoning.
the spot zoning, your concern is that you'd have different standards for subdivisions?
Well, this, a little more than that.
Okay,
The classic concern for spot zoning is you singled out an individual parcel for special treatment. And that's generally seen as a violation of the law in most states and most circumstances if you singled out for special treatment. But here, it's not exactly a singling out, it's almost a reverse. And again, it's more of a legal call than a planning one, and Idaho's laws are a little different from what I'm more accustomed to in Texas and Colorado, so I'd like for Pat to weigh in on that part.
Okay, Mr. Chair and David, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted to address the spot zoning issue myself also. Although what David says is a correct statement of you know what the general law is regarding spot zoning. You can have there's actually two types of spot zoning that are recognized in Idaho. One is simply rezoning of a parcel in accordance with the comprehensive plan, and that happens relatively often. Usually there are parcels that are zoned the same or similarly in the neighboring area. And so spot zoning isn't necessarily a concern. The other type is, as David said, when you're singling out a parcel for special treatment, as opposed to the prevailing pattern of zoning and development in the area and not necessarily consistent with your comprehensive plan. Here, I'm not as concerned about spot zoning if you were to generally recommend approval, but exclude a parcel or two or three, because the zoning, that would have the effect of keeping those parcels zoned agricultural suburban, which means they would not be downzoned the way the rest of the parcels would be from ag sub to rural. So that would be a case of preserving the rights of the development rights of those parcels, as opposed to giving them something that they didn't have before. And so that's why I'm not terribly concerned about the spot zoning issue.
Thank you, Pat.
Is that, if David and to this fall, is that substandard properties handled? So my question is, if someone owns a property that's 7 acres and they're on 5 acres, if we pass this, could they then split that 2 acres off and build a house?
No, the reverse is true.
So I mean,
If they're included in the rezoning, in your hypothetical, they would not be able to subdivide once the rezoning is in effect. Right now, they have basically three development rights right now, and they would be reduced down to 1.
Because the 2-acre parcel is no longer an eligible.
and the non-conforming parcels are treated differently, right?
Right.
And that's what this motion that is on page 9 is to, which we always do when we change
Right,
things.
right.
We have non-conforming, we need to go and have those people not be disadvantaged because they're non-conforming to what's here.
There's a good segue to your point, though, I think, that's worth talking about. Because the 7-acre parcel would have a development right,
right.
and they're not actually losing anything more than everybody else in the rezoning, there's no taking. There's also no issue of, sorry, I'm having a hard time thinking of a quick way to get to the point. Well, I'll have to circle back around, but while I'm thinking about it, the other party of what you bring up that comes to my mind that we ought to discuss is there's a fair number of people in this country assume they have the right to subdivide. That's untrue in this county and untrue in almost every municipality I know of, because all municipalities in the United States model their language after the same 1923 regulations that the Chamber of Commerce put out back then, the U.S. Chamber. And zoning and subdivision has always been held back by the local municipality as a way in which they guide and control growth dependent upon circumstances. So every community has some limit on subdivision. In ours, it happens to be 2 and 5 in the case before you. But it's erroneous to assume that your rights to subdivide are being taken away in the way that they would be with a taking. A taking, is a categorical taking of property interest without proper payment for it. Every municipality reserves the right to do what we are doing, which is categorically rezone in a legislative way a large area for the benefit of the public. And as long as it meets with the comprehensive plan and there's a public interest, that will always, I'm willing to put my neck out on the line, that will always withstand the legal challenge, because it always has, to my knowledge, since 1923.
And David, I'd like to confirm, because we've talked about subdividing and all that, what we have been told that the reason that this even is before us is not to stop growth. That's not the plan, although ultimately by having larger parcels, it would. But what we were told is it's a water problem, a water insufficiency problem. And their short-term approach, you could agree or disagree, but their short-term approach is to request a large rezoning in order to reduce the density and therefore the water consumption. And it doesn't solve the problem long-term potentially, but that's their hypothesis of why this is before the Planning Commission and ultimately the county commissioners. And I just wanted to reiterate that because I'm afraid that people will think that this is a growth restriction, and it's not really, that's not the intent of it.
I'm glad you brought it up that way, because the code amendment you will be looking at in the future soon, I hope, for minor subdivisions, would actually have more of a growth control aspect to it than this does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for David? Oh,
So,
yeah,
maybe
Paul.
one more, David. So when we say there are substandard properties, which, as I understand it, that's 2 acres to 5 acres?
Non-conforming,
Non-conforming.
Non-conforming?
yeah.
Okay, so there's 80 of those?
Well, no, there would be if you went forward with this rezoning.
Yeah.
Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, there are 80 parcels that do not have 5 acres today. And they're okay today because,
Right.
but tomorrow they would be 4 acres and they'd have to be handled. And that's what the purpose of this motion is, how to handle it. Again, it's a
Right.
common thing we do.
Mr. Chairman, his saying that, Mr. Glader, you were saying that reminds me, the one other thing about this being a little unusual tonight is we double noticed the hearing for you and for the county commissioners. So, meaning that the county commissioners' hearing is scheduled for December 8th. Normally, we would have a little more leeway between the two hearings, but there's nothing that prevents a double noticing. I decided to go ahead and double notice because the neighborhood's really concerned about this, and they wanted to get in front of the board as soon as possible.
So going back to Chairman Levine's point, this was brought to us. This is not something the county is pushing out with. It was brought to us by the community itself.
Thank you. That's a good point to remember.
Sure. Anybody else? Okay,
I
Sherry, I'm
I have
sorry.
a comment. So to kind of piggyback off of the previous question, if somebody did have 7 acres, under the new zoning, they would be able to sell 5 of those 7 acres?
No, because you can't leave a 2-acre non-conforming.
Yeah.
Because it's already non-conforming to begin with. Well, sort
Well,
of,
no.
yeah,
Seven's
Seven's
perfectly
fine.
conforming.
okay.
You can't
But-
make the best way to think about it is you really can't make a parcel yourself non-conforming.
You can't subdivide to do an illegal thing.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And all we're trying to correct are the ones that will become, if that's what we decide to recommend.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no one else, and Deborah doesn't have her hand up, so, okay, what we'll do now is, we'll move into the public comment period. As we normally do, I ask people to come up here or on Zoom. Please just let us know your name and where you're from, so for the public record. We'd like to limit the comments to about 5 minutes, so that we can get to all the people that are in the room and potentially on Zoom. And then once everybody's had a chance to speak, we'll close the public comment period and move into deliberations. So I'll ask David he has some cards to go through there. But the other thing is, it is a public comment period, which means that generally we're going to listen. We're not going to actually discuss. We may ask clarifying questions, but we're really just going to be listening to your comments and taking it into consideration, as well as the comments we received previously via email or other mechanisms. David?
Thank you. I'll just start reading these off in no particular order. Michelle and Joel Clark are opposed and do not wish to speak.
They're behind you.
Wait, David, we have a hand up.
So apparently they've changed their mind. Come on up and speak.
We heard something different coming in. Sorry.
Can you please come up?
Yeah. How embarrassing.
No, it's okay.
Hi, I'm Michelle Clark. I live at 8072 West Cougar Gulch Road. We heard something different, that this zoning had recently been changed from rural to ag, suburban, whatever. You know how you hear things. We don't see our neighbors every day because of where we live. So with that understanding, we were opposed to it being suburban. We prefer rural. So we just didn't want that to go on record that
So you're actually in favor of the rezoning?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarity. Next, we have Gordon Dobler, who's neutral and does wish to speak.
Since I've seen Gordon.
Gordon Dobler, my offices are in the city of Hayden, 580 Capstone Court. And I'm here representing Pristine Ridge, who owns a specific parcel that David showed you earlier. So we're here in a neutral capacity because we're not generally opposed to the proposal of a rezone. We're somewhat neutral on it. But we're here to say, and again, it's my understanding that the nexus of the rezone, the purpose is a concern about water. Specifically, our property is served by an outside water source that's more than adequate to serve the development under the current agricultural suburban zoning. And I believe you've seen my email that I sent to David, but in short, we're served by the Ridge at Cougar Bay water system that serves the Cougar Bay Ridge off of Espinazo, and it's got more than enough capacity. In short, I've given you enough information to back that up rather than think it's just a claim. And I do want to tell these good people that this isn't really an end around, but we are not impacting any of the water up in that area. These wells are located down in the Spokane River. They produce 1,000 gallons a minute, more than enough capacity to serve several hundred homes, and they serve about 100 right now. So there's more than enough capacity in the system. It would not be a burden, wouldn't impact any of the local groundwater whatsoever at the current zoning requirement. And then to say, it's our feeling that we probably shouldn't have been included in the first place, but happy for the opportunity to clarify this, to make this known to the, the concerned property owners and say, yeah, we understand that's a valid concern, but we believe that we're okay, this property will be okay, and we are asking that we be removed from the boundary of the zone change.
Thank you.
Barry has a question.
Oh, Barry.
Sorry about that. So you've had studies done that this is not affecting the watershed of Cougar Gulch itself because it's coming off the Spokane River, so it has no effect on
Yes.
the water resources?
Yes.
And you've had a study done in that regard? A study showing that?
Can I add something,
Sure.
Barry, to this? I'm kind of well aware of the Cougar Bay Water Association.
You
since
live there, I understand,
I'm a
yes.
member of it. It is an independent, it actually comes from the aquifer. It goes underneath the Spokane River, the pumps are in Riverstone. And it was sourced back in 2000 and something or other to handle many more homes than we currently have. And I know that this development is in consult with Cougar Bay Water Association to deal with it, but there is adequate water and it really doesn't.
You clarified if it's coming off the aquifer, it makes a
Yeah,
huge
yeah.
difference. So
Yes.
that's the clarification.
Yeah, and that's why I said we haven't done a study, but by inspection, it's a
Yeah.
totally different
It's a
water
huge,
source.
huge difference.
Yeah, yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Richard Brodka is in favor and wishes to speak.
My name is Richard Brodka. I live on Meadowbrook Loop. I moved there 15 years ago, and the impact of new homes and traffic and water could be a problem for not just this parcel here, but other parcels. I'm a well witcher. That's my job. Within a mile of my house, I had to do 5 of my neighbors' wells. When I moved in, there was no new housing up on top 15 years ago. The original houses that were there, those wells went dry. There were 7 houses built. Fortunately for the folks, I got them water. So water can be a problem. And water is expensive. $50 to $80 a foot. So a 400 or 500 foot well is $40,000. And I'd hate to see other people well dry up because of growth. I mean, I wouldn't want to be the guy in my well going dry because I have 3 new neighbors. I don't have $50,000 to drill a well. So between the water issues and the traffic issues, that's why I'm in favor of expanding the acreage. Density, growth is good, but density is, we're going to look like strawberry fields here pretty soon. And we all moved there not to move to strawberry fields. Just using that as a high-density area. We all moved there for elbow room, animals, peace of mind. When I moved there, I could leave my driveway and not see anybody. When I come to town now, I actually have to wait at my driveway to get onto Meadowbrook Loop. So traffic's a problem, and water can be a problem. That's all I got to say.
Thank you so much.
Marvin Caper is in favor, does not wish to speak. Mike Schreiber is in favor, does not wish to speak. Jerry Allman is in favor, does not wish to speak. And Shisley Allman is also in favor, does not wish to speak. Tam and Val Kuntz in favor, do not wish to speak. Travis Irving in favor, does not wish to speak. That leaves us with just a handful of people that are in favor and want to speak left. Doug Albertson in favor, wishes to speak. Doug, come on up.
My name is Doug Albertson. I live at 7862 West Clementson Road, which is sort of in the middle of the 6 mile area. I've been there 40 years. We have a well that's 270 some odd feet deep. That well has dropped in static pressure by a little over 100 feet since we've been there. The wells around me, my neighbors, 3 have gone dry and they've re-drilled. We have a limited supply in this area. We are not on an aquifer. What we're doing is sucking water out of small fissures that are recharged on a yearly basis. And that's dependent, of course, on how much rainfall we have. I did a study for the last 10 years of our rainfall, and it has diminished. And I think we'll, again, this is a supposition on my part, but it appears that we're trending in a lower water situation in our future. Now, we had one of the commissioners say that we could allow other people to come in and build homes, and if they didn't find water, they could simply truck it in. And clearly this is an option, but it's a rather narrow view in that we're all sucking out of the same area. Somebody downstream of somebody else's well can affect the wells upstream and around. So we have a resource that is really important to conserve. And if we don't, if we allow many more people to suck out of our water supply, everybody's going to be bringing in water. And a lot of us can't afford to do that. And it's not a sustainable way of living in this area. If you look at Coeur d'Alene, it's gorgeous. You know, I don't think there's anyone here that wouldn't say this is a beautiful place to live. However, you can't see all the resources that are available that allows you to live. Let's look at another society closely related but not human. That would be chimpanzees and bonobos. They're a society. They live together. They share food. And they also patrol their boundaries to prevent other groups from coming in and getting their food. Yeah. They can't see their water supply. They can see their food supply, and they're ready to protect it. We can't see our water supply, and we have a chance now to be proactive to protect it for the people that are living here now. The people that can't afford to drill a 500-foot well, and even then, they may not get water. There's a current development that did a study with a hydrologist out of Spokane that drilled a well And the hydrologist said, hey, there's rivers of water under this area. Okay, well, they drilled an 1,100 plus foot well at an astronomical cost and got 3 gallons a minute. And 1 gallon at a reasonable level and 2 more gallons at 900, 1,000 feet. So even the hydrologists don't agree about the water here. However, the people that live here have seen their wells run dry. And I personally have seen mine drop. The reason I know it's dropping is many of us are putting in sonar devices to send a signal down with great frequency and give a readout of the static level. So there's a number of us in this room that have installed those. So this is not a supposition that our water levels are dropping. And we may be overusing our abilities right now to live. We may be sucking our water supply flat with just the number of people we have living here currently. So it's a water issue for me. You know, I don't care if there's more people moving in. The issue is the ability to live here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm unsure of the pronunciation of his last name. I'm just going to spell it. K-L-E-M-E-N-O-K. It's both Ivan and Susan. Both of them are in favor. It doesn't say if they wish to speak. If either of you would like to speak, please come forward now. Karen Irving is in favor, doesn't say if she wishes to speak or not. Karen, do you wish to come forward? Hallie and Jerry Fetzer are in favor and do not wish to speak. Stephanie Fetzer is in favor and does not wish to speak. I think this is Steve Schwartzen is in favor and wishes to speak.
He's coming down.
He's coming.
Hello, Steve Schwartzer, 1791 South Stack Road. I'm in a unique situation. I have one of the properties which is smaller than 5 acres, but it already has a house on it. How that happened, I don't know. But I also have 10 acres next to that, which is in the zone, and 10 more acres next to that, which is outside the zone, already in the rural situation. I have also worked for a water company in the past where we dealt with these exact issues. And as growth and development happened, wells started running dry. I've noticed my well getting lower and lower pressure over the summertime and then finally recovering when we start getting rains and such. So my concern is the water because of growth. Not against growth, but when we start getting high density, we're going to not have any water for anyone left. So please consider that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynette Brown is in favor and wishes to speak.
Good evening, commissioners, Mr. Callahan, staff, and my neighbors. I was part of this petition gathering, signature gathering process. Let me give you a little bit of history of how we got to where we got to. Mr. Callahan came to our grange, our hall, with one of our commissioners and to give a presentation about some of the concerns we had. And in fact, they've done that several times. Thank you very much for doing that. Filled the room, I think, every time you've been there because it's a serious issue. But the first time when I was there, they were coming up with ideas. How can we respond to what's going on around us right in front of our eyes? And during that meeting, Mr. Callahan gave us some proactive measures to take. One of them being, there's a series of them, and this is just one step in a series of things we hope to accomplish to protect this natural resource, the water. And Mr. Callahan gave us the idea to prepare a petition to show how important it is to us, to illustrate. And I think at the time he even mentioned, because we asked, well, how many signatures do we need? By the way, by my count, there's about 353 parcels in this 6-mile radius zone. I might be off one or two, but by the database I was given. And I believe at the time, I don't want to quote you, but I believe he said like 30% would be a good showing, something maybe 30, 40%, okay? Was that roughly correct? I don't know. But we were going for majority. Let's get the majority of neighbors. So we put together a committee of neighbors. We each took streets, you know, we talked to all our neighbors. We got this petition together. And it was overwhelming response, signatures, and we got to a super majority. And that was well above our original goal of getting the majority of 51%. During our discussions with our neighbors, there were only 4 people that we knocked on their doors and asked them that they didn't say no, they just didn't want to sign. So we don't know their reason, their motivation, and we honestly couldn't get to everybody because we are, even though we're not zoned rural, we are very rural. A lot of neighbors have gates, they're hard to get to. Some aren't there full time, some properties aren't developed, so we had to mail, you know, to their residents, which might not be in our neighborhood, but they, you know, they're the property owner. Our response rate for them was actually pretty good. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of history of how we got to the project or the step of putting a petition together, because it was super clear that there was an overwhelming majority of people wanted to go in this direction. Now, I don't want to speak for the people that are opposed to it. I don't know why. They didn't say why. They just didn't want to sign. But according to my tabulation, we got 75% of the property owners to sign, and that's if you count them by parcels. Many of the neighbors own more than one parcel, and we just had to come up with how many, well, let me back up. It was by, we were going to do it by, you know, property owner first, but then we did it by parcel. If one owner owned 2 parcels, we did count that once for each parcel. I didn't state my address. I'm 6038 Heine Road, and kind of right in the middle. We had to drill our 4th well this summer, not because, well, the 3rd well, the first 2 are gone. The 3rd one is diminished, and we just don't want to lose this significant investment we made in our property by not having any water. So we took the proactive measure to drill the 4th well because the 3rd one was diminishing. And some of the people we spoke to during this process, and even one of our neighbors, they truck water in the summertime because it just doesn't recharge fast enough, their wells. Whether you are of the opinion that you think trucking water in is, should be part of living in our neighborhood, I don't think so. I think we don't want to reduce the amount of water available for our neighbors. And if somebody comes in and does a subdivision, you're impacting people that already live there by possibly, that's our right. We want to protect our right. We already live there. We're not opposed to people coming into our beautiful neighborhood. It's just that we don't want to lose what we already have. We have a well that's supplying our property, but if somebody next door drills, they could tap into it and reduce our finite resource, which impacts us, impacts our property value, impacts, just the way we're used to living. So anyways, I wanted to let you know about the signature gathering process in case you have any questions on how that worked, or the history of where this whole thing started. So thank you, and we would really appreciate your vote in favor of this rezoning.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the cards I have from the audience, but there is a Travis Moore on Zoom that's raised his hand and would like to
Okay.
speak at this time. Go ahead, Travis.
Hi, can you guys?
Yes,
Hi, can you guys hear me?
yes.
Yep.
Oh, hi. So, hi, my name is Travis. This case is kind of interesting because I bought 100 acres of the previous ranch of Cougar Creek, which I know had a fight for water resources. I'm in favor of the proposal to keep it rural. I just put in a well myself. Cost me 50 grand, and I'm only getting 5 gallons a minute. All I want to do on the property is basically just build a house and kind of keep it like a family ranch. I want to preserve the rural character of this area, and I know that water is kind of important up here, so I just wanted to kind of say that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's a Paul Packman on Zoom, and that would be the last possible person on Zoom that might like to speak. Paul, did you want to say anything?
There's a hand in the back.
Apparently not.
He's muted.
He's muted.
Well, he could have unmuted himself.
That's true.
I'm actually asking him to unmute if he wants to. I don't believe so. So that's everyone that we have at the moment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anyone else in the audience would like to speak? Okay, since we've heard all the comments both on Zoom and in person, would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing for ORA 220004 Cougar Gulch rezone at 6:52 tonight?
So moved.
I figured you would, Barry.
Seconded.
Okay, and Commissioner Dean, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we're into deliberations. I think the best way to do this is twofold, or maybe is first, the three options that David talked about, one of the options was to not approve it in entirety. And I just wanted to ask if any commissioner would like to speak on behalf of not approving in entirety, so we could take that off the table. Deborah?
I have a question
Yes.
about, okay, actually I have a few questions, but this is on what you're asking about right now. Would excluding that 80-acre parcel be a separate decision from the rezone of the rest of the 6-mile area? Are we making essentially two decisions, Pat?
It
Well-
could be, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to do it that way.
Yeah.
You could do it. You could do it separately, or you could just do that as part of the, you're deliberating towards the ultimate decision, whatever that is.
You just carved
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Yeah, and, basically what we've done in the past, Deborah, was we say we'd approve it as submitted with the following exceptions. And then we would
Right,
say
yeah.
parcel number, which we have in this case, we have a parcel number, so we do the parcel number to highlight that specific one. If we had other parcels, we would do the same thing. So it'd be one
I
motion
just,
to do it, prove it with
Okay,
its exceptions.
okay, I just wanted to make sure. And go ahead and see if anybody else has anything, and then I have a couple other
Well, why don't
questions.
you just go, Deborah?
Okay, so does anybody know if and how many wells in this area have already gone dry?
I don't know if we've ever been given that piece of information. David, I don't think.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know that answer.
Yeah. I will say that for those of us who were on the planning commission back, 2-3 years ago, when we went to this area for the comprehensive plan rewrite for the goals of policies and objectives that we did, we heard at that time that wells were going dry in this area
Right.
for subdivisions going there. So I don't know if we
Right.
actually have a number, but it seems to be a long-term problem, and it sounds like it may be it's not getting any better, put it that way.
Right. I just wondered if there was any documentation of that. The other question that I have is the map, David Callahan, that shows where that 80-acre parcel up in the corner is located. Does that map locate the identify the location of the Spokane River in relationship to that parcel and the rest of this rezone area?
Yes.
Can you see where the Spokane? It
Yes.
does. Okay.
Yeah,
The
yes.
Spokane River is to the north and northeast.
Okay. Because I'm just kind of wondering how it is that that particular parcel could be fed from the river or the water, the aquifer, but these other parcels are not being fed from the aquifer.
I think, Deborah,
I think Chair Levine addressed that.
yeah, I think the easiest way to look at it was back, again, early, I don't know what year it was, 2005, 10, when some of the development, especially the ridge of Cougar Bay, was approved with the conservation area and everything else. Around that time, my understanding is that the Cougar Bay Water Association was established early around that time. And it's not just that area. It's not just the ridge of Cougar Bay or this particular subdivision. It's many properties between about a mile south of the Spokane River. And I don't know the actual number of properties. It's like 277 or some neighborhood of that have been allocated, and that's how it was established. Now, why it never moved further south, I don't know. But that's how it was established, and it is a set geographic area that the Cougar Bay Water Association basically feeds today.
Okay, I understand all that. I just, wondered if it's kind of like, okay, here's the property line, so this is where the service from that water district is going to end. But I suppose it is because that water district established a certain area that it would serve, and it's not that some of these other parcels in this rezone request area couldn't not also possibly be served by that water district.
And that's a question that really you'd have to go to the board of the Cougar Bay Water Association to ask whether or not they would expand their, again, they have limits to their capacity too. So I don't know, Deborah. That's not our question.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. So I think we have eliminated the one option. The other option, obviously, is to approve it as submitted with no exceptions. Is anybody want to speak on behalf of just approving as submitted? Okay, so now we have a third option, and that is to approve it with some exceptions to the map we've seen before. And I think that we should probably do this parcel by parcel. So I would like to just propose the first one that David highlighted on that map, on whatever page, Madeline, that is, whatever. Page 5, that parcel, which the 80 acres, if that's what it is. How do people feel about recommending the county commissioners exclude that parcel from the rezone?
I'm in favor of that request because it has water service from a separate entity. So I don't see that would be an issue for me personally.
If I could I just poll people? We're not voting on this, but just polling people. How many are in favor of excluding that parcel? So we have a majority, so, okay, and David, based on the letter, we have a parcel number, if that's the correct parcel number, I don't know how we would,
Well,
we have to identify it somehow in the
I think you
motion.
can just say as represented by Mr. Dobler,
Okay,
because I can track the parcel number down.
okay.
He's got the parcel number.
It's actually in here.
It's in
Yeah, it's in the parcel, that's what I was gonna use, is the parcel number 50NO, whatever.
The
And
AIN's on the
AIN
page. It's right on the same page.
139871.
It's in there.
So the AIN's a better number?
It's easier.
Okay, all right. So, David, you talked about some other parcels, and I've, looking through my notes, do you have a list of those parcels that have,
The new ones, I haven't read the new ones. They may be included in that one, but the Ray and Judy, I guess this is BZ. Ray and Judy BZ, that number is 124948.
What size is that, David?
and do you know where that is on your map?
I'm just rereading this to see if I can remember.
7584 West.
You know what we could do is, we could take a 5-minute break. I can
Okay.
pull it up on GIS.
Yeah, because, and then we have this other one from Martha, which is, okay, why don't we take
Could I make an exception? Is there more than that one that we're looking at?
Uh-huh.
there's a couple.
We could get those identified
We could
during the break?
identify all of them. We have AINs
Chairman?
for at least
That
Okay,
okay?
if we do
Two
that,
of
Chairman, have all of them identified that are, we're
Well,
looking
we'll
at?
take a break, they'll get all the stuff, and then we can come back in 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, just besides that one, if there's anything
Yeah.
else, so we can
Yeah, we
identify
want
all
all
of
of
them.
them at one time. So why don't we try to come back around 7:10?
Sure.
Okay.
I can pull it up.
You want to do one by one?
Yes, sir. Ben's going to share the screen so we can go through each of these. And this one is this 127740? This is AIN 127740. It's an 8.55 acre piece by Dean and Heidi Holler Living Trust.
It's at the northeast corner of the intersection of Heine Road and Meadowbrook Loop here.
And the next one, why don't we do the one right across the street from
She's
it?
gonna, for just a second, so we can see out, yeah.
Yeah, show us where it's at. So it's,
Does that give you a better idea?
so how far,
And then you don't have the map with the outline and
Yeah, we don't have the ability to pull that up online
it's fine.
okay.
at the moment. But I can tell you that's in the northern third of the,
How far up elevation wise? It's hard to say by
Yeah,
that
no,
picture. Don't worry about it, Ben, I'm sorry.
I think that probably is a bit higher. It's kind of below the overall minimum.
Is it?
I think, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a bit higher.
Ben's got the terrain, he's pulling it up now.
It's up near the Meadowbrook area.
Now this would be really generic because it's USGS.
They give you an idea at least.
Back up to that elevation, Ben.
Okay, so it looks like
About
here's
2440.
2440,
So
somewhere around 2440
400,
to
440 feet off the lake. Thank you.
Is that 10-3 piece, this 1250-10?
oh, right. Okay.
So we'll just cycle through the rest of these. 1250-10,
010,
yep.
which is right directly south across the street.
That's across the street from the other one.
That,
And it's 10.3 acres.
So they do have the ability to potentially subdivide.
and what was, how many acres were the first one, David?
6 point,
No,
or no, 8.55.
This one's 10.3.
Right.
Well, so they'd still be eligible even under the new zoning.
Yeah,
You get 2 5s.
they just couldn't divide it 5 ways.
They would be able to divide once as opposed to 5 times now.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is,
Okay, next would be this 1249-48. Which is Beezy's property.
That's 6.5.
6.5.
6.5 acres, and it's about 2,400. Yeah, about 2,300.
That helps.
So it's right off the
Well,
bottom.
that's right off the bottom of
Right off
Greens
the
Ferry
bottom.
Road.
Right, yeah.
Two Gulch Roads down here at the bottom.
Green Ferry going up.
Greens Ferry going
Yeah,
up.
that's Greens Ferry going there, so that's right.
The last one you know, but we'll pull it up anyway, it's the 1398-71.
And that's, real quick, that's 6.5 acres there.
Right. So this is the portion, the piece that Mr. Dobler represents. This next one, 1398-71.
Oops. 1398.71.
Yeah, which we own them.
80 acres.
Yeah, but see, they're not very far from the Cougar, that water system at all. They're pulling off the same line as that other one over there.
all right, so we have 4 parcels. We've agreed to do one of those, the larger 80-acre one, which is not dealing with water at all. It's not a water concern because of its water association. So my question is, we have 3 others that would be needing wells to be drilled, I'm assuming on that. But what do people think about collectively all 3 and then individually any one of them? Do you?
So all 4 of these pieces, they,
Well, the first one, we've already agreed that we
Right.
would recommend the county commissioner remove that parcel from this rezone.
Okay.
The question is, the other 3, you know, I think as David talked about early on in the presentation, is if we decide to remove something, we should have a reason to explain why we did. We could say they requested it, so we did. I guess that's a reason. So we could do that, that's legitimate. But what do people think? The options are, they're all 3 parcels. I don't know how you would separate one versus the other, because they're not, none of them are on the end of, at the end. They all have water issues. So again, what do people think? How do you want to proceed? Comments?
Question, so these are the 3, exception of the 80 acre, these are the 3 that did not want this to occur because it was going to affect their land.
Yes,
Okay. These are the only 3 that we have that have any issue with this rezone
that we know of,
that we know of.
and that you're not dealing with already.
Yeah.
I'm
Obviously,
taking the
county
80 acres
commissioners-
off
The county commissioners could get more,
yeah.
because they're the final say. But what we're doing is recommending what we think is the right answer, consistent with the comprehensive plan, consistent with the reason this is being done, and also recognizing the fact that this would be a down zone and down zoning, according to comprehensive plan, is not something that we take very lightly. We like to make sure there's a good reason. David talked about the public good, which is always a debatable item sometimes. But I'm just trying to understand how we would like to proceed with our recommendation. What we need is to have 4 commissioners agree. Barry?
I'll try to move forward with this. So I would like to see the rezoning with the exception of these, going back to like the non-conforming that we already have in place, given that it's a very small amount and that the impact would be fairly minimal at this point, and it would make it easier to move forward. But of course, the county commissioners would have ultimate oversight to agree to that or not. So
Are you saying take out the 4?
take out the 4 and move forward.
And add
with
in the
rezone.
clause for
Non-conforming.
nonconformity?
Yes.
Would that be a motion?
Not well worded, but yes.
Well, before we actually go on vote on it.
Yes, that's true.
How does people think about that? Because,
I would support that.
okay,
And for those same reasons, plus they requested it, including.
And one more comment, it allows us to move forward more expeditiously with the least amount of concerns, and then we get this issue addressed that way. The water issue.
Deborah, you have any comments? I don't want to forget you.
Well, I mean, the issue is, the concern is water, and just that one 10-acre parcel could end up putting in 5 wells. And I don't know how that might affect the neighboring wells around that parcel, that one alone. So I guess I'm okay with going with removing the 80-acre one up on the corner that's already got a source for water from that one water district. But I don't know how much these other parcels, if they fully develop them out to what they could in the ag suburban zone, how that might affect the other wells, neighboring wells around them.
If I may, I had the somewhat same comment she does. Two of these letters talk more about growth restrictions as opposed to water issues. In other words, one of them is more about usage, which is really not what we're here about. In other words, they're talking about, they haven't researched it because they're suggesting that this change would allow different uses than what we do now. In other words, they're talking about gun clubs, aircraft landing strips, et cetera.
And that's their concern.
That's their concern, is why they don't want to see the change. And while that's not really an appropriate, I don't think, from my perspective,
I believe, if I may, I believe they're concerned about those are uses that could be allowed if approved through a CUP.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Agreed. And the other one, the 10-acre one, just suggests that there's going to be a lot of parcels that are going to be less than 5 acres here. And so they're opposed because they're going to, I'm not even sure why they're opposed, even after I read the letter. So from my perspective, I think we'd be better off just to approve the whole thing with excluding the 80, and then if they want to come back through the commissioners and it asks for an exclusion or an approval, I'm more in favor of that scenario than I am doing these on a one case off basis.
So why?
This is kind of the opportunity we have before it's rezoned, and I agree, and I understand what you're saying, but they still have to go through a minor or a major subdivision process for approval.
Yep.
And then you still have the water issues that they have to be able to provide a minimum amount of water for each one of the parcels, and that's
True.
an economic issue as well as anything else. But we should probably get clarification as to whether they really do want to be excluded from
Yeah.
this or not.
Well, okay, so what, it sounds like we have at least three people, Deborah, David, and Madeline, who want to just exclude the 80 acre and let the people who have requested it to provide maybe more information to the county commissioners in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Paul, Sherry?
I'm also for that, just excluding the 80 acres and let the other individuals please come forward to the county commissioner meeting when they are working on passing this legislatively.
Paul?
I guess I've already been on record as supporting your original idea.
All right, well,
As a consensus, and I'm sorry to do this to you, Paul, but I'll go back and, given what was stated with that, we can move forward with the 80 acre out of this and move forward and let the commissioners deal with the minor amount of exceptions that are on record.
and maybe David
Yeah.
can go back and get additional information.
Well, it was clarified by what,
Well, let's clarify what those,
Yeah,
what they're.
we don't know, and he's right about
David's
that.
sounds like
comment
we need
is a
some
good comment.
Okay,
Yeah, that's a good comment. All right, so,
so I move back my
all right,
position.
so Barry has made a motion, make sure I get this right, to recommend approval of the rezone of parcels of totaling approximately 6 square miles in the Cougar Gulch area from agriculture, suburban to rural, as presented in case ORA 22-004, with the exception of parcel AIN number 139871. So that is the motion that Barry has made. Do I have a second?
I will second said motion.
Okay,
Chair Levine,
But
Commissioners.
don't we have to vote or do something with the first motion since it was seconded?
I don't think there
Pat?
Okay, I wasn't necessarily, I don't know why my video wasn't on. It wasn't necessary.
oh, I know.
Yeah, and we could just consider it a friendly amendment, and that would take care of the parliamentary procedure
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see, in addition to the motion that allow for the text amendment, that's reflected in the staff report also.
Yeah, Pat, I thought that was going to be another motion, but I guess you want to add it on to this.
Oh, you can't. Well, yeah, if you want to make it as a separate motion, that's fine.
Yeah, so,
I just want to make sure it isn't missed.
yeah, what do you prefer, Pat?
One and done.
I would actually prefer that it be in the same motion, the way that Aaron Qualls
Okay, so I'll see if I can get this right.
put it in the staff report. And also one other thing is that you should also add for the reasons stated in Mr. Qualls' staff report,
Okay,
which are right below his draft motion.
okay, so basically what I'm going to do is a motion to recommend approval of the rezone of parcels totaling approximately 6 square miles in the Cougar Gulch area from agriculture, suburban to rural, as presented in case ORA 22-004, with the exception of parcel AIN number 139871, and to, I guess, have parcels of less than 5 acres, which were zoned ag suburban prior to December. What date would that be, Pat? He has just a date on it.
Probably December 8th, which
Okay.
is when the board hears this.
Prior to December 8th, and were rezoned to rural as of that date, shall be regarded as conforming parcels for the purpose of the title. And then, do I have to do the last sentence on that, Pat? Uses of such parcels should be.
I think what you have is sufficient.
Okay,
And again, other than, for the reasons stated in Aaron Quall's staff report.
and for the reasons stated in Aaron Quarles' staff report.
In the motion.
That's the longest motion we've ever done. Okay, Barry, you still okay with that motion?
Is that mine now?
Yeah, that's right.
We'll go back to it. Yes,
Okay.
I'm fine with that.
All right, now we're going to do roll call vote. And again, this is an opportunity if you do want to give any comments when you vote. So, Deborah, I'll have you vote first.
I vote in favor of the motion. I hope it helps everybody out there.
Good, thank you. Barry?
I vote in favor.
David?
I'm in favor.
Madeline?
In favor.
Paul?
In favor.
Sherry?
In favor.
And I'm in favor, and again, the motion to recommend this to the county commissioner is approved and will be presented on their public hearing.
So great.
So moved. All right, do I have a motion, Barry, to adjourn the meeting?
This is my last one. Motion to adjourn?
Oh, no, you got December.
David, you seconded?
Yes.
Okay, we're adjourned at 7:25.
Thank you, Commissioners.
You got another meeting.